You are looking at a live view of the Falcon 9 rocket on Space Launch Complex 40, preparing for liftoff in just about 10 minutes from now at 4:25 Eastern or 9:25 Universal Time. Welcome to the live webcast of the GovSat-1 mission. It's the middle of the day here in Hawthorne, so people are gathered to watch the launch and making a bit of noise. I'm Michael Hammersley, a materials engineer in our avionics department. And today, SpaceX is making a second attempt at launching GovSat-1 into a geostationary transfer orbit from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. We scrubbed yesterday's launch attempt in order to replace a sensor on the second stage. Today's launch window is about 2 hours long, and we have a backup launch window at the same time tomorrow, starting again at 4:25 Eastern or 9:25 Universal Time. GovSat-1 is the first satellite of GovSat, which is a joint venture between the government of Luxembourg and leading satellite operator SES. SpaceX has a long and storied relationship with SES. We've launched 4 of their satellites, the first in 2013, and our first mission with a flight-proven booster launched SES-10 early in 2017. GovSat-1 is aimed exclusively at government and defense users, and it will operate along the 21.5 degrees east longitude meridian. This makes it ideally positioned to provide highly reliable and flexible interconnectivity within Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. It will also enable maritime operations over the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. You can see the familiar markings from re-entry on this Falcon 9, which first flew for NROL 76 in May of last year, launching from Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center. SpaceX now has 3 operational launch sites: Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy, Space Launch Complex 4 at Vandenberg, and the pad of today's launch, Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Air Force Stations. More launch sites allows SpaceX to launch more frequently, which is a key step in achieving our goals of full and rapid reusability on our way to Mars. The unique markings that you see on the rocket following re-entry are reflective of both the difference in temperature of the rocket's propellants and the proximity to the engines at the base of the first stage. We carry both liquid oxygen and rocket-grade kerosene, also called RP1, on the rocket, but the liquid oxygen is super chilled, which changes how the soot and heat from the engines interacts with the surface of the rocket. Where the stage is colder, soot isn't able to stick as well. Falcon 9 is a 2-stage rocket, which means it has 1 stage to get out of the atmosphere and a second stage to get the satellite up to orbital speeds. The first stage has 9 Merlin engines, which is why we call it Falcon 9, and is about 2/3 the overall height of the rocket. The main job of that first stage is to get us out of the densest portion of Earth's atmosphere, and it will accelerate GovSat-1 as well as the second stage to the edge of space at a few thousand miles per hour. At that point, the first and second stage will separate. The second stage will continue accelerating GovSat-1 up to speeds of about 17,000 miles per hour. In today's mission, we will not be recovering the first stage. Let's check in on Falcon 9. The first stage helium load and the second stage helium load began early this morning. Those are largely complete. The pad was cleared about 8 hours ago. Propellant loading began just over an hour ago, and RP1 is now at about 99% full in both the first and second stages. Liquid oxygen load began 30 minutes ago, and we are looking at about 95% complete in the first stage and 90% complete in the second stage. The range is currently a go, as well as the payload, which transitioned to internal power about 30 minutes ago. Weather-wise, we've been sending balloons up to gauge the upper altitude winds, which are looking good. We've been keeping an eye on the thickness and height of some stratocumulus clouds. You can see them on the screen there. We don't want those clouds to be high enough or cold enough to form ice crystals, but those aren't a concern for launch. Engine chill began about 4 minutes ago. It's important to get the engines to the same temperature as the propellants so that the liquid oxygen does not suddenly turn into a gas upon contact with the much warmer plumbing, among other things. We've got several members of the GovSat-1 team in Florida to watch today's launch of GovSat-1. In particular, we would like to extend a warm welcome to the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister of Luxembourg, as well as their Royal Highnesses, the Prince and Princess of Luxembourg, all of whom are watching today's launch in person from Florida. Designed exclusively to address governmental and institutional security user needs, GovSat-1 is the first satellite of GovSat, which is a public-private partnership between the government of Luxembourg and world-leading satellite operator SES. The public-private partnership is unique in that it allows governments to take advantage of the lower costs associated with commercial satellites while still meeting governmental security needs.
GovSat is a brand operated by LuxGovSat SA, a public-private joint venture company between the Luxembourg government and SES, the world-leading satellite operator. Our mission is to provide secure, reliable, and accessible governmental satellite communication services to address the demand resulting from defense and institutional security applications. GovSat-1 will be a multi-mission satellite, which will use X-band and military Ka-band transponders with wide beams, as well as with high-powered and fully steerable mission beams. As a geosatellite, GovSat-1 will provide superior, accurate, real-time information wherever it is required. Over Europe, Africa, Middle East, and substantial maritime coverage over the Mediterranean and Baltic Seas, as well as over the Atlantic and Indian Oceans.
We are coming up on T-minus 4 minutes before launch. We are tracking no issues at the moment. We've just finished up loading up the helium that's pressurizing the first and second stages, and we're in the very final stages of liquid oxygen and RP1 loading. By loading those propellants so close to launch, we can keep them very cold. And being denser, that means we can load a little bit more of each of those propellants onto the vehicle. We're also performing some final communications checks with the full Falcon 9, and also testing the thrust vector control system, which basically wiggles the engines to make sure that those are properly able to steer Falcon 9 during ascent. We are preparing for Falcon 9 to take full control of the rest of launch, and the spacecraft is still a go for launch. At this point, we're just coming up on about T-minus 3 minutes before launch. Let's listen in to the last few minutes of terminal count.
Stage 1 LOX load is closed out. Stage 2 launch load is closed out.
Yep.
Vehicles and self-align.
AFTS is ready for launch.
Falcon 9 is in the startup. Launch directors go for launch.
Minus 30 seconds. Minus 15 seconds. Stand by for terminal count. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Power and telemetry nominal.
And there you saw a successful liftoff of the Falcon 9. Stage 1 propulsion all looking nominal. Beautiful clear shot of Falcon 9 ascending through the Florida sky there. About to go through supersonic. You may see a sonic boom with this sort of clear sky.
Vehicle is supersonic.
Coming up shortly, we're about to enter max Q. That's the point of maximum aerodynamic pressure when the rocket is pushing hardest against the atmosphere.
Vehicle has passed through max Q.
We've successfully passed through that point. That's always a major milestone in every rocket launch.
Impact engine chill.
We've just begun chilling the second stage engine for the same reason that we chill the first stage engine, to make sure that it's ready to be at the right temperature, the same temperature as the propellant. Coming up about 30 seconds from now, we're going to have a few events in quick succession. The first stage engines are going to cut off.
Recovery vessel has AOS.
The two stages will separate, and the second stage will ignite. You can see the plumes fading away as the rocket is getting out of the atmosphere. Trajectory is still looking good, and those three events, main engine cutoff, separation, and second stage ignition, happening right now.
Maybe go.
Stage separation has confirmed.
And there you saw it. First stage successfully cut off, the two stages separated, and the second stage has begun its burn. You saw the retaining ring fall away, and that protects the MVAC Merlin vacuum engine nozzle during shipping. Again, we are not recovering the first stage on this mission, but we are about 30 seconds away from fairing deploy. The fairing protects the satellite during ascent, but it's not necessary once you get out of the atmosphere, and so we'll let it fall back to Earth to keep that propellant available to loft more satellite.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And we've got confirmation of the fairings separating. You can see one of the fairing halves in the screen behind the second stage engine there. Beautiful clear shot of second stage against the Earth background.
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
Trajectory for stage 2 is still nominal. This burn is going to continue for about another 4 minutes, at which point the second stage will then turn off its engine and have a coast phase for about 17 minutes. It'll be in a parking orbit at that time, and the coast phase will be preparing for the second burn, which will push the satellite into its geostationary transfer orbit. We're about T plus 5 minutes and 20 seconds at the moment. At about this time, the first stage would be on its way back to the drone ship. And it's weirder to consider that we're not actually recovering this one. SpaceX has landed, I think it's about 20 first stages at this point. And the goal is for each first stage to last tens of launches in the short term and hundreds or thousands of launches in the long term. T plus 6 minutes and 15 seconds. Trajectory still looking nominal. And that second stage burn going to continue for another 2 minutes or so.
Stage 1A of TSS saved.
Stage 1 entry burn has started.
Stage 2 continuing along nominal trajectory.
And stage 1 entry burn shut down.
You just heard the call out that the stage 1 had its entry burn start and then shut down. While we are having a re-entry burn, we are not recovering the first stage. T plus 7 minutes and 20 seconds. Second stage propulsion and trajectory all still looking nominal, just the way we like it. And about 1 minute remaining in this first burn to get to a low altitude parking orbit for GovSat-1.
Stage 1 is transonic. LOS, Cape Canaveral, stage 1, as expected.
Stage 2 is under terminal guidance. Stage 2, AFDS has saved.
We're about 30 seconds away from the second engine cutoff event. You'll be able to see that on your screen.
Stage 1 landing burn has started. Legs have deployed. And Stage 1 splashdown.
We have Seco.
LOS Cape Canaveral, Stage 2, as expected.
You may have heard that the first stage had its splashdown. Again, that was not a recovery of the first stage. That was an expected splashdown. The second engine cutoff event was confirmed, as well as a good parking orbit. And there you can see second stage in space, coasting in that parking orbit. It'll be doing that for about another 17 minutes or so, at which point the second stage will burn for about another minute to change it from that low altitude parking orbit into the geostationary transfer orbit. We're going to take a break during that time, but you can see the progress of the second stage on the animation on your screen. Currently a few hundred miles east of the Florida coast. We'll be resuming coverage at about T plus 25 minutes or so. So stay tuned and we'll see you shortly. And welcome back to the live webcast of GovSat-1. We are currently in the final stages of the coast phase of the second stage, and the final parts of that coast phase, I suppose. The liftoff of Falcon 9 occurred on time at 1:25 Pacific this afternoon, 4:25 Eastern. Successfully lifted second stage and the GovSat-1 into a parking orbit. And we're about to begin a second burn of the second stage that'll last about 1 minute to get it into a geostationary transfer orbit. Second stage is currently at 245 kilometers in altitude, and geostationary orbits are at 36,000 kilometers in altitude. So this burn is going to move GovSat into that higher space. That second stage burn is coming up just a few moments from now. And there we have it, a second stage ignition for the second burn. And that will greatly increase the final altitude of the GovSat-1 in order for it to be able to move itself into the correct position at 36,000 kilometers. We've moved so far east at this point, we're just off the western coast of Africa, that we're very much in nighttime, which is why you can no longer see Earth in the background. That second stage burn continuing for a few more seconds. And then we have shutdown. We'll take a few moments to confirm that we're in the correct geostationary transfer orbit, and then a few minutes to make sure that the satellite is healthy.
GNC confirms good orbit insertion.
And we just got confirmation that the geostationary transfer orbit is in fact good, which is just the way we like it. We're going to take a few minutes now to make sure the payload is healthy and prepare for that payload deploy, which is the final step of the mission for SpaceX. That payload deploy is coming up in a few minutes from now, so we'll take a quick break. But stay tuned. And at about T plus 32 minutes, we'll cut back in to show what we can of the payload deploy. Stage 2 is still performing nominally. We've got an acquisition of signal from our station in South Africa. And the next major event and the last important one for the mission for SpaceX is the payload deploy step, when we release the satellite from the second stage and allow it to continue on its geostationary transfer orbit, at which point it will circularize its orbit at 36,000 kilometers at 21.5 degrees east. And that payload deploy is going to look just like a gentle push away from the second stage. And it looks like we'll be having good live video of that. That payload deploy event coming up in just about 10 seconds from now.
Base up. Spacecraft separation confirmed.
And there we have it. Successful deploy of the payload, nice and smooth, and confirmed separation, just the way we like it. That concludes the live webcast and SpaceX's portion of today's mission. Thank you very much to GovSat-1 and SES for choosing us for this launch. Thank you to the Range and FAA for your support, and thank you for tuning in to watch today's mission. If you'd like to join us on our mission here at launching satellites and getting to Mars, check us out at spacex.com/careers. Otherwise, look for further updates on our social media accounts, including for Falcon Heavy, which is currently targeted for February 6th. Thanks again for joining us.